I loved traveling all over the world, and I loved the challenge of really negotiating national accounts with Fortune 500 companies and sitting in boardrooms. And I learned how to be that woman in that man's world.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jacqueline Landry here. I am your host for the podcast, or our podcast called Get Diversified. So I have a very special guest. She is a mentor. You probably don't know that you're a mentor for me, but it's Melanie Fitzpatrick. So welcome to the show, Melanie.
Well, thank you, Jackie. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit. I'm just going to give a super brief introduction of you. So Melanie is a real estate investor and owner of Blue Horizon Property Solutions LLC and co-leader of Gather, a real estate investing collective for women entrepreneurs in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I could go on and on and on about talking about Melanie. But Melanie, why don't you give the viewers and the listeners a little bit more detail about yourself?
Well, okay, thank you. Yeah, so we talked like when we first started how you abbreviated the bio, and thank goodness, because honestly, that made me laugh because the bio that I could have sent you was like this long. And I like to say that I'm in my fourth chapter and maybe even now on the verge of my fifth. And I think that's the fun, that's the essence of life, is when you continue to evolve and follow your own lead, meaning I view us all as having such deep potential, and that every time you answer that thing that lights you up and you act on it, it practically is the pathway towards your next evolution and or your next chapter, however you want to describe it. For me, I had a pretty successful 28-year corporate sales career, and I got out in 2014. And the first thing that I did when I got out was I bought a piece of real estate, which we always, I know it's like, good on you, girl, because I still had that W-2. And I needed, my husband and I, we needed the W-2 in order to purchase the property, because even though we had heard about using other people's money, we didn't really believe that. We thought it was like, we thought there was like, how that doesn't even sound right. But anyway, we had the money to buy it. And so we bought the duplex next to us. So that was fun for me because it was like, it gave me like, I knew that when I left corporate, I was definitely going to pursue a women's coaching business because that was a passion. And I had already become certified. And yet I wanted to give myself permission to like actually take a deep breath and exhale and sit in that new space. Because the truth is that after a big career like that, you don't even know who you are. You're starting over. I'm peeling back, right? I
Yeah.
had to peel back
So
this.
question, Melanie.
Yeah.
So you talked about a very successful 28-year corporate career.
Mm.
Not a lot of women can say that. So talk about why it was so successful and what some of those obstacles were that you overcame to be that success that you ended your corporate career with.
I think sometimes the thing that helps us the most to overcome the challenges, and I'm just going to give people a context of the timeline. So I went into this corporate career. God, when did it start? It was in the 80s, like 1986. Yeah. And then I left in 2014. And so that had a couple chapters into itself because I was local in the local Pittsburgh market. I was in transportation logistics. Meanwhile, I jumped into that from being an actress and doing commercial work and also being a print model. And I knew that I wanted to have a real world job. And so I still continue to do commercials on the side. But I think the thing that helped me to be successful is it's all about alignment. It's about when you choose what you love. And sometimes you're not really sure that you love it, but it gets put in your path and you discover, wow, I'm a natural at this. And first of all, when you're in transportation, you better know like geography. And I don't think geography is really taught anymore, but this will sound so funny. But one of my audition for this working for a local transportation company in Pittsburgh was I had to draw the map of the United States and fill it in with all the states and capitals. And I was able to, I know, right? That was like part of, like this guy asked me a lot of questions and his wife had seen me in a theater production and he didn't really believe that I would I wanted to go work for him. And I was like, yeah, well, maybe I really don't, but I kind of want a real world job so that I can start to make money. And so I did that. And I was, I was able to do all that. I was able to fill it all in. And because I loved geography and I loved studying maps, and all I ever wanted to do is travel. And he did it. He asked me, what do you really want to do in life? And I said, travel. And this is like 26-year-old Melanie, just like whatever, saying whatever I wanted. No one told me how to interview for a job. And so I was just me. I just showed up as me at 26. So the thing is, I ended up really loving this. There is this sort of natural transition when you're an actress and you basically portray all these different characters. Well, this was just another character for me.
Yes, I
And,
love that. I love that.
I just, I did.
Character.
I just showed up. And the thing is, I was really pretty much calling on all these men. It was like calling on my dad over and over again. And so it ended up actually kind of being fun, and the really fun relationships I developed with these men, because I was in transportation. It was basically a male dominated industry. And I ended up loving it. I loved the travel. I loved the pursuit. I loved the challenge. And I always viewed it as like the Greek goddess Artemis, and she's the goddess of the hunt. And I always imagined myself as just pulling back that arrow and the bow and releasing the arrow on my target. And so I guess I was a natural salesperson. I didn't know this, but I loved to go on the hunt in search of the next client and then develop it. So that ended up elevating me into the national account arena for this company. And I had a 5-state territory. And then once I elevated to that and I became good at it, I started to win awards, and I became the top female sales rep in the country, consistently winning National Account Manager of the Year. And then I became like the I guess it was called like the CEO, another elevated level. And I won a lot of trips, and I won and I was also bonused. Financially, I was doing good too. And so I ended up getting married in my late 30s and having a baby. It was it's now the 2000s, and I have a toddler, and I'm in my 40s, and my career really takes off. And I really learned how, having contacts all over the United States, I formed like this team, and we all helped each other's success. And I really liked that. I had the corporate team, and then I had, because this was a franchise-based organization, it was still a totally male-dominated industry. But I ended up just like all women did who had high-powered careers. I was on an airplane at 6 a.m. In the morning, and it was just me and the boys. I was dragging my briefcase and my luggage, and we were on the first flight out, and it was me leaving Pittsburgh, and I traveled every single week. And my husband, we worked out this arrangement, but in terms of taking care of our son. But I loved it. I loved traveling all over the world, and I loved the challenge of really negotiating national accounts with Fortune 500 companies and sitting in boardrooms. And I learned how to be that woman in that man's world. And while there were downsides to that, because like it was really hard to be a mother, and put family first, you know.
Yeah, I know.
And I had a boss that wasn't exactly gracious with that regard. One time I was able to find a big office where I could have all my kids' stuff, and like I would get him out of daycare early, and then he could spend some time with me in my office days. And one time my boss said to me, like, "Is that your kid in the background?" And I was like, "That's my child. That's my baby. Like, don't
Wow.
call it my kid like it's a goat."
Wow. Wow. But yeah, that's typical. So I could see
Yeah,
him.
and it was a very 90s kind of leftover mentality. Like they were allowing women in the arena, but they didn't love all the stuff that came with a woman because, basically then we managed all the balls in the air. Like I was a significant income provider, and then I also kept all the balls in the air while I was away about my child's education and his daycare, his aftercare, and just everything that goes with managing a household. And I did that while I was in Seattle on a different time zone. You do what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's the way that career went.
That's really great that you found your way and that you still managed all those balls in the air without losing your mind. And then one
Yeah.
day you kind of woke up and said, "Hey, I reached the heights that I wanted to reach, in this chapter of my life. And I'm now going off and buying some real estate. So start there. Is that the start of your second chapter?
Yeah. Well, things began to break down for me. It was interesting for women. I think it's also worthy of mentioning is that one thing that was never discussed is that when I hit my mid 40s and my career really took off and I had a toddler, I became perimenopausal, but nobody was talking about peri. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know why I was starting to feel like I was losing my mojo. And so by the time 2008 came around, when the market was in the fall of crashing, it was really the real estate market, right? That and then it affected all the other markets. I was peaking in my career financially. Was holding a $15 million portfolio. I was still like the number one female or national account person in the country. I had decided that things are changing for me and I wanted to start something new. And like I wanted something more, but I didn't know what that something more was. And then lo and behold, I found this really great fashion boutique and I was in negotiations with this owner. I wanted to buy it. The thing is that I had to buy it. I couldn't work in it. I'd have to keep her on to work the business, but I would come in on the weekends. And so I was doing all my due diligence with her and I was looking at the books, talking with her accountant because she was saying that she made a lot of money. But a cat and dog are outside the door and they just had a fight. But the thing is that on the books, she didn't show her income. So I was like, wow, it's really hard to pull the trigger. And the next thing you know, it's November of that year and the market is full on crashing and the doom stories are happening. And I got scared. And because I knew what it would cost to buy that boutique, and I knew I had a huge vision, and I really wanted to get out of the transportation market so that I could find a little financial freedom and to spend some time and be in my son's life. And then that market crashed, and I did not have the courage to pull the trigger. And so the following year, I lost 30% of my portfolio. We had a CEO change, and the new guy came in, and he didn't know me as this huge success. He only knew me as the woman who wasn't hitting her numbers after that. So I became very depressed. Things changed, like I said, in the corporate structure. And I couldn't turn it around because nobody was buying because we were in the aftermath of this market crash. And so by the time 2010 rolled around, I was like, oh my God. I was like, how am I getting out of this? What am I going to do? And I found a mentor and I began to invest in myself. And this is a really key element for women is that when you are stuck and you don't know how to get yourself out of stuckness because you are relied upon for the income that you're contributing. You've created a lifestyle around the dual income for both of you, and your husband isn't ready for I was waiting for that baton pass, like so I could pass that baton and then be in the life of my son a little bit more. It was always my dream. I thought I would be able to do that, and that was like a big no. So I started to invest in myself, and I went out to the West Coast for this transformation leader, and I didn't know how to change to the degree that I needed to. Anyway, I studied with her for 3.5, 4 years. And I basically just peeled back the onion of who I thought I could be. And I stepped into this whole other energy of I'm going to cultivate the courage to get out of this corporate job. I needed to, and she was also coaching me how to enroll my husband into why this was necessary. And then guess what happened? I got the cancer wake-up call. And at 52, and this was 2012, I got the cancer wake-up call. And so I embraced it. Fortunately, I had done enough inner work and spiritual work to be standing on a solid enough ground to say, okay, I'm going to choose this medical route, but I'm also going to heal myself, spiritually and mentally, and really kind of get to the root of how I might have created that, because I created all my conditions, right? I created the success I had, create and overcome this health challenge. And so in those next 2 years, I really focused on getting that certification for coaching, like stepping into this. I remember they talked about how you create the bridge before you leave. And that was a concept of how you wanted to get out of your big high-powered job. And so I was creating that bridge and I became certified. I did a lot of volunteering with Dress for Success and coaching their women. And then by 2014, my husband and I, he was enrolled, he was on board, and I made a lot of sacrifices. I sold the Mercedes. I went into a more affordable vehicle. And I
Yeah.
stopped coloring my hair. I stopped having those like $200 hair boutique expenses. And I started coloring my own hair. So I was like, I've made enough sacrifices. No, I'm kidding. And it was great because then I got to spend a lot more time with my son. We bought that property next door. It was amazing how I just knew what to do with it, and I got it on the market, and it was rented, and we got that passive income. So it was a little bit of a gap bridge. So I mean, I'm telling a story here where women can kind of latch on to, hey, if you're not loving what you're doing, first of all, I definitely think real estate investing is a great passive income choice to pursue while you have a W-2. And it's something you can do on the side, right? And so I then began to build a coaching business, and that was really super fun. I started a podcast. So by 2015, I was out by 14, and I had bought that property. I had launched it, and I then was now in like what I would call full on chapter 2. And I started a podcast, and it was, my platform was Live in Your Truth. And I developed my own website. I launched my podcast, and it was Live in Your Truth Radio. And I had started to really, because I had met all these women and people from on the West Coast and all around the world through studying with this woman for 4 years, I began to interview women from all over the world. And it was really about what happened that put you into this phase of knowing that you needed a transformation, and how did you navigate it, and how did you get to the other side and where you're at today. And I thought it was really worthwhile story and content to be sharing with women to inspire them. And so I must have interviewed like 25, 30 women from all around the world. And I mean, honestly, and it's what grew my coaching business. And I did it privately. I did it in groups. I started women's circles. I continued to get educated. And so then that became like the next thing that was my passive source of income. And I still got to be in my child's life, and I had so much fun. By that point, I was helping him find colleges, and I was running him around to all his sports, and it was pretty satisfying. And then my husband got to step in his power too.
Jacqueline and Melvin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of Get Diversified. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. Finally, stop by our website and follow us on social media. Ciao for now. Make it a great day, and we'll see you next time. And remember, get diversified.